Okay, so today we need to finish talking about closing. There will be some opportunities for you to get some bonus points if you want those today, and coming up with answers to questions regarding social styles and various types of closes. So you might want to look at your social styles handout or whatever and see if you can match the social styles to the type of close that we're going through, and provide a justification for whether or not you think a certain social style would be more or less effective with each type of close, similar to what we did for handling the objections last time. So attitude is crucial, obviously, having a positive attitude. We talked about, as I recall last time, how you can change this, and using the Amy Cuddy video as helpful in keeping a positive attitude, since sales is about oftentimes hearing no and overcoming that resistance to no and not being intimidated. So be positive, have the courage of your convictions, know your product. This is easier if you go into, and one of the things that we really stress in this program is that, yes, we are the only program that can say that we have 100% placement of our majors and minors, and 80% of our placements make over $100,000 in the first year. But if you want long-term success in sales, I think it's important that you go into a field that you are interested in. So for example, when I left UCO and went to the private sector, I went to work for an educational software publisher, a company that did learning management systems. I've told you this multiple times, but redundancy is good. For the K-12 market. And the reason I could do that, I don't think I could have gone and been general counsel for Philip Morris. What's Philip Morris? Anybody know what Philip Morris produces? Nobody knows. Nobody's a smoker in here? Nobody smokes. Wow, that's amazing. Because smoking is increasing among your generation. Good for you. They're a manufacturer of cigarettes. I don't think I could have gone to work for them. In Built to Last, Jerry Collins and Boreas detail what makes a successful company, and they use case studies of some of the largest companies that have been around for over 100 years in the United States. And one of them is Philip Morris. And one of the things that they talk about is that the companies that are successful have a core set of values. Now that sounds good, and we talked about this when we talked about ethics, but it doesn't necessarily mean that those values have to be things that we would think of as being good values. What do we think of as being good values, good moral values? Well, things like honesty and truthfulness. If you've seen a movie called Thanks for Smoking, which is fairly accurate with regard to the way the gun industry and the tobacco manufacturers promoted their products and had lobbyists in Washington, they were ruthless. The CEO of Philip Morris was described as cunning and indignant that there was nothing wrong with selling a product for which people had absolutely no need. Well, it's more than just they don't have a need for it. Cigarettes, there are lots of things that may be amoral that you don't have a need for, but I wouldn't say that it's immoral to market them simply because there isn't a need. There may be a desire, but cigarettes go beyond that, don't they? We know from the health records that they cause all kinds of problems. It's not just the Surgeon General's warnings that are printed on the cigarette packs that are problematic. They cause, for example, in women, an increase in, and in men, by the way, as well. Men can get breast cancer. They cause an increase in the likelihood of developing breast cancer. In men, they cause a likelihood and an increase of developing prostate cancer. And so it's not just that cigarettes are not necessary, it's that they are actually a harmful product. And he was described as saying there's nothing wrong with selling a product that people don't need and being very indignant. And in fact, they did this. I could not have gone to work, my point of all of this is I could not have gone to work for Philip Morris when I left UCO to go into the private sector. it just wouldn't have worked out for me. I don't believe in that product, but I went to work in an industry that I did believe in, and I believed in the product that we were selling, that it was a good, solid product, that the company had good results, that it was a quality product, and that it was one that was contributing to the overall greater good of society. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't go to work for Philip Morris selling cigarettes, you know, if that's really your heart's desire, but really think about the industries that you want to go in. I was talking with my sister, who's the vice president of sales and marketing for Boeing, this weekend as we went down there for Easter to watch the kids hunt Easter eggs, because she's got this big ranch in Texas, and the kids, you know, had lots of room to hide eggs and hunt them. So they've hired a new guy. She's moving into a new role at Boeing. She's getting a promotion to being a senior vice president. And the new guy that they've hired to replace her at Boeing is a guy that came from selling scopes for firearms, rifle scopes. Boeing is a major manufacturer of jets, and she said, I don't know what they think this guy is going to bring to the table. You know, I mean, going from selling scopes for, you know, I mean, he did business-to-business sales. He wasn't selling scopes at Dick's Sporting Goods or Academy or something like that. He was selling to the major, you know, retailers of these things. But that's a consumer product. What she sells is aircraft to the military and to various militaries around the world, not just the United States. And she's going to become a senior vice president for strategy, move out of the sales and into strategy. And she said, I just don't know what this, and I couldn't figure it out. Like, why would you hire somebody who sells, you got rifle scopes to go in? So know your industry. Most of our sales students have an idea of what industry they want to go into. They want to go into medical device sales, or they want to go into pharmaceutical, or they want to go to work for Paycom. They have an idea of the industry that they want to work in. So when I say have the courage of your convictions, that's easier to do if you believe in the product. If you don't believe in the product, it's very difficult to overcome that. So think about what field you want to go into. Be persistent. Most sales are closed after the fifth time. Most salesmen actually don't even ask for the sale, and so you have to be persistent and don't take rejections personally. Always be alert to the possibility of a close. Look at the prospect's body language. Are they relaxed? Sensing the moment that it's right to close immediately. So what are those signs? If they touch their cheek or chin, if their hands are open and relaxed as opposed to across their chest, staring at you, if they're making eye contact, if they're friendly, those are all signals that they are receptive to a close. And so be aware of those signals and close, you know, as soon as you get those kinds of signals from the buyer. Always be closing. Trial closes. Ask for an opinion. Can you see how this product would benefit you? The reason that you ask for those kinds of things is because once people commit, they're less likely, people like to believe that they are logically consistent, that they are inherently consistent. Now, we're maybe not, but they like to believe that. And so once people commit to a position, it's very difficult to change their mind. And if they've committed to you, they've said, yes, I can see how that this would benefit my company, ADP would be a great fit, they're less likely to then do a 180-degree turn and reject your product. So it's designed to get a read on the prospect's feelings and a probable reaction to the close. So here's where we can get some points today. Types of closes. Which type of close do you think will go with each social style? So a continuous yes close. This is where you ask a series of questions, closed-ended, designed to get a continuous yes. Do you understand how ADP could benefit you? Yes. Do you see how it will save you time? Yes. You've agreed that will allow you to then be able to spend that time on marketing. Yes. That will save you ultimately money and add to your ROI. Yes. Okay. She actually had her hand up first. So
Would it be a driver just because you're like straight at them?
Yeah, it could be a driver, I think that's correct, maybe. I can see that, because you're actually, being very direct, closed-ended, not open-ended, yes, yes, yes. Yeah,
Analytical,
analytical, okay. What if they start thinking about it?
well, that's why you have to have like evidence to back you up, like right away, so you
Okay.
can close out the question.
I would say that anyone will be the easiest one because since the students get,
You think so? Why do you think that?
because if you're making an answer about what she has, you have to know it was like, okay, I like this thing, blah, blah, blah.
Okay, I'll buy that. All right. Who would be the least likely to be receptive to the continuous yes? You think the analytical? Why do you think that? You can disagree with your, there's no necessarily right or wrong. What's your rationale for?
I think there's like more open-ended questions that we could speak on it more.
Okay, allow them to express their thought process. All right, so you think the analytical may be less likely to use the continuous yes?
I think my personality kind of matches up with the driver, and I wouldn't like if someone was doing that at me. You know, like, then they could see through it, so if someone's like trying to, oh, do you want this? Yes, this, yes. I wouldn't like that being pushed into a corner, because I feel like that's my personality,
Mhm.
so I don't think it would work that good on a driver. I think a driver would ask those questions, but I don't think a driver would be really as receptive, in my opinion.
Okay, all right, I'll buy that argument. There are, again, no necessarily right or wrong answers. I can see it going either way. You can make an argument that a driver would be, getting to the point, yes. Although if you go too long, maybe the sort of the synthesis of the thesis and antithesis of the position would be that if it goes on to, if you're asking 15 questions, the driver would become impatient with that and not necessarily like it. I think, I asked you which one would be least likely.
I think it would be expressive.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think the expressive would be the least likely to be receptive to the continuous close, because the expressive is gonna wanna what? They're gonna wanna talk, they're gonna wanna interject, they're gonna wanna put themselves in the position, and I think that is the correct answers. The physical action close, this is where you take some act that physically demonstrates the close. Filling out, now you have to be careful with this one, filling out the invoice, taking out a contract, saying, all you need to do, I've taken the liberty of putting together the contract, and all you need to do is sign right here on the dotted line. Yes.
Driver?
I think a driver would be receptive to that, yeah, because they're you're direct to the point. Does anybody else need this roll sheet for today? Yes, to the point. Who would be least likely to be responsive to the physical action close? I think you could make an argument that the expressive would be, again, because you're taking control, you're not letting them express themselves or talk, and so they might be least likely. Again, these categories can overlap, and the order blank close is closely related to the physical action close, where you start filling in the blanks on the purchase order. I think, again, the driver would be receptive to that. What about the ownership close? Now, this is one where you ask them to picture themselves. This one works better, I will tell you, with business to consumer sales and not so much business to business sales, because as a business to business individual, I don't care how I picture I guess you could say, can you understand or can you picture yourself using this product? But it works better in business to consumer. Which kind would be most receptive? Yeah. I think that's right, yeah, because it allows them to visualize, you're making them the center of attention, and it allows them to visualize themselves in the position. And so the ownership close, which would be least receptive to the ownership close, do you think? I think that may be right, yeah, because they're gonna start, if you start asking them to picture themselves and visualize it, they can also what?
Visualize our code wrong.
They can also visualize, yeah, all the problems that might occur with it, that goes wrong with the product. The alternative choice close. Do you want 500 units or 1,000 units? Giving them a binary choice. Now, the nice thing about the binary choice is that it limits the options. To some extent, and you have to think about this very ethically, when you, again, this is how all of this ties together. When you do these kinds of things, remember that you are dealing with people and that you have to consider the ethical considerations of things. When you give people a binary choice, a lot of times it's either this or not this. It's an in or an out. Would you either like 500 units or 1,000 units of these widgets? It forces them, or it narrows the field of possibilities for them to consider. And you can somewhat manipulate people by doing that, and you have to be aware of that. But the binary choice, where you give them one or the, do you want that in, the platinum option or the gold option? Who would be most receptive to the binary or the alternative choice type of flow?
I think it might work best with the driver, just because they're risk takers.
I could see analyticals just because they think things over, so like if they have an option of both, like they can kind of think about them.
I think that's right. I think analyticals, what you've done is you've narrowed the field for the analyticals so that they're not going off. You've narrowed it, but you've allowed them to think about it. I think it is very, very useful in analytical, because what you're doing is you're limiting the choices. You can get, again, analysis paralysis, and I told you this, I gave you the story about buying a microwave oven. Our microwave went out, and so I go out and I start compiling the notebook on what we're going to need in terms of the microwave oven. Microwaves come with lots of options and features. And I come home one day and my wife at the time had just bought the microwave. Did you consult the binder? Analyticals, I can be somewhat of an analytical, and so I can, pontificate, put things off, or procrastinate, and put things off, and she just went out. And so if you give them a choice between two options, that can limit the field, but still allow them to feel like they are analyzing, the pros and cons of two things. And so I think that is the correct, or the most correct answer with regard to that. You could see it as, with regard to your suggestion, as a way of mirroring the driver. Not being too aggressive, I guess, but also assuming that you're going to get the close and giving them sort of two options. Who would be the least receptive to the alternative choice close, do you think? You can make an argument.
Maybe amiable.
You think amiable? Why do
Well,
you
because
think
they're
that?
like unsure, so they would be like, oh, I don't know between the two. Like they think they pick one and they're gonna be like taking the wrong decision, so then they second
They
guess
could have-
themselves.
Okay.
I think they're uncomfortable with risk, so they may be like, wait, I'm not ready for that yet.
Alright. Okay, I'll buy that argument. What other type might be less receptive to it?
Maybe the driver, because they just want to end it and figure out a solution to the problem, rather than at the end of a presentation have an alternative choice.
Okay. What about an expressive?
I was gonna say expressive kind of too, just because, like, they probably won't want to just see those 2 points or like those two options, like they probably want a more expanded version of what everything could be, I guess.
Okay, yeah, I think it may be the expressive. Again, there are you can make good arguments for a lot of these. Some of them are sort of easier to see than others, but I think that you all have made pretty decent arguments with regard to some of these today. The impending event close. This one is closely related to the never the best time to close, the impending event. It's the end of the quarter. We're making deals. You can do this, by the way, you can use this as a buyer. You can look at these, so thinking about this from the other side of the coin. When is the best time to go buy a car if you want to buy? If you are a good negotiator, and I am generally a hard negotiator. I had literally the last car I bought, I got what I wanted, but the car before that, I actually had the guy follow me to use, because I just kept leaving. I just kept walking off. This is what I'm gonna pay, we can't do that. So as a buyer, you can actually flip the process. Generally speaking, when is the best time to buy a car? We have a couple, you're the person, right? When is the best time to buy a car?
Isn't it when the end of the month?
Yeah.
I thought it was the year.
The end of the month is generally one of the better times. Why is that?
Because we desperate for making deals.
Why are you desperate for making deals at the end of the month?
We have hidden quotas and, like, at the end of the month, everything we sell is basically for profit.
Okay.
Like, every commission we get is for us.
So why is the dealership more interested in selling at the end of the month?
Because they have to hit the quota for the manufacturer, like.
Yeah, they have floor plans, and their profitability is dependent upon if they are a new car dealership. If they're a used car dealership, it depends, I mean, if you're one of the buy here, pay here lots, it's less so, but if it's a new car with regard to the floor plans that they have with, like GM or Ford or things like that, they have, they have more incentive to sell at the end of the month. They also have, as somebody else pointed out, they have more incentive to sell when? At the end of the model year. It's
Yeah, that's what I
another
was
time.
thinking, because when my dad worked for General Motors, they were always desperate to get rid of inventory when they get the new models.
Right,
Didn't
when
have
the new
any-
models come in, yes.
I would say September, August, September, and October is the best months to buy a car, because we already get 19 or new models, so if you wanna get them.
Right, so you can flip this on the seller, by the way, the impending event, so it's the model closeout, they're switching over inventory, things like that. Of course, the dealer is going to use this as what? Yeah, these are the last, models I have from, 2017. Once they're gone, they're gone. And, the new models have come in. Particularly when I bought my last Ford, I now have a Dodge, because Ford wouldn't deal with me the last time. I kept walking off on the 3500 that I bought. But they were switching the last year, it was the last year that they used mostly steel, and they were going to the aluminum body. And so they were able to say, once the price is going up because we're using aluminum, and they tried that on me. So the impending event, it's also, like I said, closely related, you'll see never the best time to close. The direct close, this one is obviously, I'm not gonna give you bonus points for this one because the direct close is hook, line, and sinker. The best person to use the direct close on is, everyone should sing it in a chorus with this one. This is like, the low-hanging fruit, the direct close, just asking what can I count on you to, sign the contract? Here it is. It's gonna be the driver. Because they want you to get straight to the point and tell them what you want. And so it's the driver, which now you can get bonus points for this one, which is the least likely to be receptive to the direct close. You think the analytical? Okay, I would see that. Why do you think that?
They want more, I guess, explanations, they ask questions. And for direct close, it's going to be too short. It's not enough information.
Okay,
I think it will be the
the amiable?
yeah.
Why do you think that?
Because with the director they can I think the risk of what they are doing, but with the amiable they can I don't like the risk.
Okay, I can see that. Amiables want to, maybe have more conversation, think about it, things like that. Which other one can you make an argument for?
Expressive.
Yeah, I don't think it works very well with expressives. That's probably the golden answer. In my opinion, that's the golden answer. It doesn't work well with expressives. Because expressives, you're not making them the center of it. By asking for a direct close, you're in what? The position of
The center of attention.
the center of attention rather than them. So I think it works less well with them. the summary close, where you say basically, now, there's something nice about a triumvirate ring, so there is a way that academics write, and you should learn, you can pass any paper except maybe a creative writing course, by learning this formula, and it also works with people. It's called the 3 exposure hypothesis in marketing. You have to expose people to an idea 3 times to get them to understand it, comprehend it, and be receptive to it. We also use it in academic writing. So your term papers should have an introduction, which is you're going to tell me what you're going to tell me, a body, which is you're going to tell me what you're going to say, you're going to tell me what you're going to say, and then you're going to close or conclusion with tell me what you told me, right? So it's 1, 2, 3. There's something nice about that. And so a summary close, highlight the 3 major points of the presentation, summarizing each and the benefits, and who do you think that's going to work best? This one's pretty low-hanging fruit as well. You think it'll work well? It may work well with the driver. I think there's one type that works better with.
Would it be expressive?
I think it's analytical, because you are giving them all of the information in the close that they need to think about. But you're summarizing it for them, you're giving them these options, and I think it works well with the analytical. Because you're repackaging all of it for them and letting them think about it. The callback close, this is when you just try to get a callback if they're really hesitant. So who would this work well with, the callback? I think it's, yeah, the amiable, because they may not want to take the risk right away, they want to think about it. Who else would be receptive to a callback?
Expressives?
Expressives, maybe. I think it also works well with analyticals, because they're going to want to think. Now, of course, if you give them too much time to think, they may think themselves out of it. The trial order close. Now, you see this used, again, a lot in business to consumer. You see it less often in business to business, because business to business is dependent upon what we call derived demand. Business is not getting it because they want the product for the product's own sake or for their own use. They're getting it because they need it to satisfy the wants and needs of their constituency, so, or their customer base. So it's a derived demand. So it works less well with them. I mean, if we have a copier go out, for example, and the copier just is put and totally broken down and no longer efficient, it does no good to, you know, like say, well, let's try out a few models. We'll bring in, first of all, it's enormously big, heavy machine down there. Trying to bring them in and out, it's not really feasible, and we need, you know, a product that particularly, let's say it breaks down around finals time when everybody's printing off tests. You need something now, and so you're going to not want to try out things. You just want the product that's going to serve it. But in the business consumer world, the trial order close works well, because once you take, it's called the puppy effect. Once you take the puppy home, the breeder that I got a Shih Tzu for Hanukkah and Christmas for my wife one year, because one of our dogs had died. And the breeder said, now you can take it to the vet and have it checked out. Every reputable breeder will do that. And of course we did take it to the vet, but once we brought it home, were we ever going to take that dog back? No. We weren't going to do it. And so that's effective. I think we talked about this. Which car company is doing the 24-hour test drive? Are they doing it? All of them are doing it? Well, Buick was one of the first ones to come up with that idea, because they wanted to try to reposition their image in the marketplace. And so they were giving you, again, if you take it home, you're less likely to return it. If you try out the Tempur-Pedic bed, you're less likely, because it's just a hassle to send things back. Isn't it? So who would the trial order close work best with?
I would say the amiables, because they're like super like passive and they're not gonna be the ones to bring it back.
Okay, I'll buy that.
I was saying expressive.
I think expressive also it works well, because again, you're letting them, you know,
Tell you what they want.
yeah, and you're letting them try it, and so I think that's correct. Who is the trial order least likely? It works pretty well with almost all types, I think, but there are types that it works better with. Which is least likely? Maybe the driver is least, and they're just gonna make a decision and they're not gonna care that much about it, so it might be less effective. The balance sheet close, this is close to the summary close. Again, they're not exclusive categories. Balance sheet is just where you basically give them an analysis of the data. This is the costs and benefits. These are the pros and cons, and ultimately this is going to be a better, deal for you if you accept it. So the balance sheet close. Who is this going to work well with? It's going to work really well with the analytical. That's correct. Yeah, because you're gonna present them with the information. They're going to be able to think about it and absorb it, and it works well with them. It could also work well for the driver, because you get to the point, you can give them the balance, the balance sheet. Never the best time to close. Now this is the one that's called the stall or the put off, and you use this where you convince them, again, it's closely related to the impending event close, but they're giving you a stall or put off, I don't have the money, and you give them a reason to buy today, making them aware that it's only going to maybe be in their economic disinterest to put off a decision. I can't guarantee these prices after today. And I had one of our salespeople at the American Education Corporation, she was the best at using this, the never the best time or the impending event. She was every sale she told, and she was so believable. She was a mom and she had been a school teacher. Some of our best salespeople had been school teachers because they obviously had experience with the product. And she was non-threatening, but she could convince them that she could not give them. And I can tell you that we would have made the deal for most school districts any day of the week. But she would convince them that like after tomorrow, my boss just won't let me give you the discount on that. And so that's the never the best time. Show them that they're not going to get any advantage by delaying. Who would that work well with? What?
I think the analytical, because of their low responsiveness,
Okay.
taking hires over.
All right, and showing them that they're not gonna get anything by their analysis paralysis. What do you think?
I think it would be the driver.
Okay, the driver, I can see that as well. You're just coming out and telling them you're not gonna get the advantage, straightforward, all right?
Would be the best goes that will be amiable.
You think it would be amiable? Why do you think amiable?
Because it was like, he's gonna be the deal anymore. Yeah, I should buy it.
Okay, I'll buy that. Amiables are, by the way, probably the easiest to sell, because they're
Nice.
amiable. Yeah, they don't like telling people no. The 1, 2, 3 close, again, this one is similar to the summary. Hit it with the 3 major points. You said if I could show you how this would save you money and time, you would be interested. I've shown you how this will save you money and time. Are you going to close today? So the 1, 2, 3. Again, there's something nice about that triumvirate rate. The cost of ownership. This is where you go, again, it's similar to the balance sheet, where you show them that, for example, a lot of people have if you look at the total number, for those of you who have, has anybody in here bought a house? Usually I have at least one, or you've actually bought a house. If you look at the total number of what you're going to pay over the life of a loan, it would scare you to death.
It took me down twice.
So, you break it up
Wait, what?
and,
I didn't close my house twice because of that.
because,
It's even more money interest than
right,
than
than the
I
house,
thought.
yeah.
I was like,
Yeah, you gotta pay. So, what are you doing with the cost of ownership clause, for example, on a house? Well, show them that the cost of the ownership with regards to the interest on the house is not actually gonna be that great, because what do you get in this country that you don't get if you're renting, for example? It's the one biggest deduction for most people, for those who, nobody's an accountant. home ownership in the United States, unlike other places, is highly, it's a government incentive to own a home, because for most people, their home mortgage interest deduction is going to be the biggest deduction that they get. Lots of people, if you don't own a home, you're probably only gonna get the standard deduction, which means you're not gonna get a lot of money back. If you're, my brother, who's a tax attorney, he'll tell you you should never get any money back at the end of the year. But most people are not like that. If you show them that over the life of that loan, that it's actually not that great of a cost because you're getting the home mortgage interest deduction, and so that's helping offset or pay for that interest that you're paying, and that can be a benefit. And so the cost of ownership would be something like the home mortgage interest. Showing them that, you know, if you break the payments out over, you know, yes, I realize that there's sticker shock with regard to this copier that you need to buy for your business, but remember that we're going to, you know, amortize that out and you know, finance it, and the cost per month is not that great. So who would the cost of ownership close work well with?
Analytical?
I think it will work well with an analytical, that's true. Who else?
I think a driver, I think they may just want to see the numbers, and possibly if you're selling them a product to save them money, if you can show them how much they're gonna save, I think it would be more.
Okay, I think that's probably correct as well. You could also see it working with an expressive, because you're allowing them to see and visualize the cost of the ownership. Again, amiables, it's, you know, they're just amiable, so I'm not sure that you get that much advantage from the cost of ownership. Any questions about closing? All right, be sure, and if you participated today, come up at the end of class. We need to talk about service, and we will not get to Salesforce management, so that will not be on the third exam. And for those of you who had me in principles this semester, this is going to look oddly similar to the services that I talk about in my principles class. But redundancy is good for those of you who have to listen to this twice, and also because I do this because a lot of the people in the professional sales class are not necessarily business majors. We have some, for example, fashion marketing majors that have to take this. They don't necessarily have to have the principles class, I think, and so I think it's important for them to get this content as well. So if you've had this, I apologize. It will look very similar to the services material that I talked about in principles, but it's important for sales as well, because services have become such an important part of our economy, and they are a huge part of almost every business-to-business sale. And again, what we are really focusing on in the professional sales program, it's not that we don't have students that go into business-to-consumer sales, we do, but the vast majority of our students are going to go into business-to-business sales, where services are a critical component, and maybe even more a profitable component of the sale. With regard, again, I'll give you an example from the company that I worked for. With regard to the actual product, a lot of our salespeople made more money off of the residual from the service contract than they did from the actual sale of the product, because we charged for the service contract. It was over a 5-year period, and every year that they renewed, or every year that when it had an evergreen clause, so it would renew for, you know, every year for 5 years. The salesperson didn't have to do a whole lot to get that. It was just an automatic renewal, and so they would get the residual off that. That also is the way it sort of works in insurance. In insurance sales, a lot of times you get the residuals off of, you know, having an established client relationship that you don't need to necessarily do a lot to, because you've already made the sale of the component, and now it's, you know, servicing, or the product, and now it's servicing that product. So services are the intangible activities or benefits that organizations provide to satisfy customers' needs in exchange for money or something else of value. That's the definition of a service. Things like the repair contract. We have to have a service contract on the copier down there, because when it breaks, we have to have somebody come out and fix it. We need the copiers, obviously, to work, particularly around finals time and test time, and so we have to have it fixed. Now, if it's out of warranty, which they usually, on products like that, you have like a 1-year manufacturer warranty, all kinds of stuff, because it's a highly complex piece of machinery that's got moving parts and staplers and hole punches and things like that, are likely to get worn out and break, and so you need the service contract as part of that to make sure that the machine continues to perform in a way that you want it or need it to or expect it to. And so that's an intangible. What do we need? What are we looking for? Well, we're looking for people who can, a company that will come out, because time is of the essence with regard to that. If the copier is down, and we get an email alert from Carrie almost once a week that something is wrong with the copier, the stapler has gone out, or the hole punch, or the collating has gone out, and they've had to call the service company in to fix it. We need it fixed fast, because if I've got to give my test and I'm not doing it, I'm having to go get that sourced from someplace else. So those intangibles, what is it that we're looking for? We're looking for somebody who has technicians that are knowledgeable and can fix it. It does no good to have a technician come out who knows very little, or is sort of, the slow man, the lowest in his class at technician school, or who is not on time, is not here when they say they need to be here. And so it's an intangible. We measure it in terms of, time and the knowledge and skill base that you need. Services scholars like Mary Jo Bittner argue that all goods are really services, in that you don't really value, for example, this device that you all are playing with right now as I'm talking. You don't value this for itself. You don't want this device because you want to look at it and, be like Gollum in Lord of the Rings, my precious, and hide it to yourself. What do you value this product for? Well, you value it for what it does for you. Not the phone itself, but the ability to communicate with your friends, your employer, your work, the ability to connect you to the internet so that you can find information. So what this really is, according to Bittner, is not a product so much as it's a service. It's a communication and information service that Apple, for those of you who have the Apple or Samsung or whatever phone you have, is providing. It's not the actual goods. So she argues that all goods are really services. That you value it for what it does for you, not for the thing itself. And I asked this question in my principal's class, and since we're sort of running out of time, I won't do it in here, and since I've given you an opportunity for bonus points. Is there something that you can think of that's good, that's not really a service, that you might value for the thing in and of itself? And the answer that I gave in that class, that I think is the sort of the gold standard answer of something that you might value for itself, is art. Art you might value for the thing in and of itself, not because it's really useful. Art, in many instances, has absolutely no use. Although I think Bittner would argue that even that is useful, in that it evokes a feeling or an emotion, which itself is an intangible, but still, it speaks to you in some way. 46% of the U.S. gross domestic product is services, and that is increasing. It will get bigger and bigger. We are moving beyond being a product-producing society into being a service society. And the real value in our economy now is in the services sector. It's in those knowledge-intensive services, financial, banking, legal, accounting services, that really make up a big portion of our economy and are going to continue to grow over the next 10 to 20 years. So the value of services since 1990 has increased by 100%, and that will probably double again in the next 10 years. $722 billion in services are exported from the United States, and that figure comes from 2014, which is a little out of date. It's one of the sectors where we have an actual trade surplus in that sector. We export more services than we actually use, unlike physical or tangible goods where we're actually importing more than we export. So we talked about the 4 Ps of marketing, product, price, place, promotion. And those are obviously applicable to the services sector as well. Even though services are intangible, we talk about, for example, financial products. And what's a financial product? Well, an annuity is a financial product. It's actually an intangible, right? What is an annuity? Something that I'll get when I retire from UCO, that most of you won't. I have a defined benefit plan. It's one of the reasons that I chose this profession. What's a defined benefit plan? Something that most of you will never experience. You take my years of service, you multiply it by 2, and I get that percentage of my high 5 income for the rest of my life. The average of the high 5 for the rest of my life when I retire. Isn't that great? Most people who retire from UCO make more money in retirement than they do in working. One of my friends, Brad Morelli, who's my former boss, in November he starts losing $1,000 by coming to work. If he does, he'll turn 62. If he doesn't start drawing Social Security, which you can't draw Social Security and work until you reach your full maximum retirement age, they reduce the amount of benefit. At that point in November, because he'll turn 62 and he's eligible to start drawing Social Security, he will be losing $1,000 a month by coming to work. Wouldn't you like to have that problem? And yet, he's still considering not retiring it's October. Did I say November? It's October. Because that's when he turns 62. He's still considering not retiring. Well, because he's looking at this and he's saying, well, if I wait till my full retirement age, which is 66 and 4 months for him, I'll get a bigger benefit from Social Security. So I'll make even more money retired than I will by working. So it may be, you've got to figure out the math. How long can you live? Are you going to live long enough to, forsake the benefit that you would get in terms of the time value of money for all of those months that you collected $1,000? But so that's a financial product that we buy basically from teachers' retirement that provides a benefit to me. So it's a product, although it's not a tangible product. We still talk about it as a financial product. Insurance products. You really don't value the piece of paper or the card that you have in your car. You value what? The peace of mind that it gives you that if you get in a car wreck that you're going to have your property replaced, or that you're not going to be liable to the person that you hit for the damage to their car. So we talk about products, we obviously talk about price, place, and promotion, and so those are all applicable to services. But there are also 4 I's that we talk about with regard to services that make them somewhat unique. So the 4 I's of services are intangibility, inconsistency, inseparability, and inventory. And each of these affect all of those aspects of the product mix, the marketing mix, product, price, place, and promotion. Some more or less to a greater degree. So intangibility. Services can't be touched, seen, held, felt before the purchase decision is made. And in some instances, they can never be touched, seen, felt. What is it when you go to a lawyer that you are asking for? I guess in some respects you're going to touch it, maybe. But maybe what you're wanting from the lawyer, at least a lot of what my clients wanted, was to actually not experience anything. So you go out and you are partying with your friends like a rock star, and you decide, foolishly, by the way, to get into your car and drive. And here come the lights and sirens. What is it that you're going to want from my services as a lawyer? Yeah, I mean, you're going to want a lot of things, right? But you're actually, what you want, you can't you hope you don't touch or feel it. You want to escape going to jail. Now, you're probably gonna go to jail for the night, but you don't wanna go any longer. You want to get it off of your record because it can impact your ability to get a job. And what you're really asking for is a whole bundle of intangibles that you'll never touch. It's what's in between my two ears that allows me to know what the law is, for example, with regard to DUI in this case, and how it fits your circumstances. And it's my connections that I may or may not have to the district attorney's office to provide you with the ability to maybe get a good plea deal or a better plea deal by hiring me. You can't know about that until you've hired the lawyer at the end. Services are usually performance-based. So the credence properties, they're difficult to evaluate even after the purchase may be made. Now, how do you evaluate, for example, whether or not I'm a good lawyer? By other people?
That you have representation?
And how many, like, cases you won?
How many cases you've won? Okay. That's an easy metric to look at, right? Your win-loss ratio. Is it the best metric?
Every case is the same.
Not every case is the same.
Maybe we can take on like easy cases.
Yeah, if I take on the cases that are, slam dunks, because I know I can win them, I may have a great win-loss ratio.
You have to pick the ones that you're going through.
You have to what?
Like, the case that you're going through, you should look at, see if they've worked in that kind of case before.
Okay, so maybe you want to know about whether or not the attorney has actually done. So for example, if you have a DUI and you go to somebody who does transactional law. What's transactional law? Well, it's basically the buying and selling of assets or companies for large corporations in most instances. And you ask them to do a DUI, you might come out with really bad results. A, because they don't know the law in the area, and B, they don't know the other attorneys. They don't know the people at the district attorney's office to get the good deals, things like that. It's very difficult to evaluate. When you look at win-loss ratios, this may be a misleading factor. So the example that I give, and for those of you again that have had my principles class, you've heard this example before, and I apologize, but redundancy is again a good thing. Some of the dumbest people I went to law school with had excellent win-loss ratios. Why is that? They went into the district attorney's office. Now, why do I say they were some of the dumbest lawyers I know? I went to Oklahoma City University for law school because I was working full-time and I had to go at night. My brother went to law school at TU. We were both accepted to OU, and my parents were horrified that neither of us went to OU. I didn't go to OU because, again, I was working and I didn't want to give up my job. Here at UCL, I was teaching in political science and I was working as the adaptive services coordinator for the university. And my brother was an OSU grad and couldn't stomach the thought of going to that horrible third-rate school down the road from us. And so he chose to go to TU. So we both went to expensive law schools. When I graduated, I was paying $950 a credited hour for law school. So basically with fees, it was a little over $1,000 per credit hour to go to law school. So a 3 credit hour class was $3,000. So if you think that your tuition is high here at UCO, and by the way, it's more than that. Most people who graduated from OCU were coming out $100,000 or more in debt because they were having to take on student loans to live, and there's not just the cost of the classes, there's also the books, which in law school are enormously expensive. And so it was a lot of money. The average ADA at the time I graduated was being offered jobs at $32,000 a year. If you are so stupid that you cannot figure out that you cannot service the debt that you're gonna have from law school and live, you may be a candidate for natural deselection. And that's what the people who, I had, like, are you an idiot? You're gonna go to work for the Oklahoma County, like, where are you gonna live? Under the bridge? Like, if you can't figure this out, you're stupid. You're a moron. And yet they you know, I mean, like the bobblehead on the car. Why were they radically successful? Because the criminals are dumber than them. They were more stupid than my colleagues in law school. Yeah, it's like shooting fish in a barrel. I'll never forget this. I'll give you an example of how stupid the criminals are. I had this one case that I got appointed to represent this guy. It used to be, in the olden days, before we bid out all of the contracts, that, so one person gets the contract for every county, but it used to be that if you were a member, if you lived in the county, you were automatically a lawyer, you were automatically on the public defender's rolls. So I get appointed to represent this guy, and there's almost no evidence against him. And I said, did you talk to the police? Yeah, but I didn't say anything. I didn't confess. Are you sure you didn't confess? Nope. You didn't sign a confession. Nope. So we go to the bail hearing, and I argue that there's no evidence against my client and that he should be released on his own recognizance. And the district attorney says, well, Your Honor, we have a confession in this case, and so we believe he's a flight risk. And I get the piece of paper, and I'm looking at it, and I take it back to my client, and I said, I thought you didn't confess. That there's a statement, because at the top of the paper it said statement, not confession. And, you know, when that's what your opponent is as a criminal, you have pretty good odds. It's a hell of a lot harder to be a defense attorney. And their win-loss ratio is much less than the people on the other side. But it takes real, I mean, like, it doesn't take much to convict somebody. It takes a lot to keep them out of prison. And so I use this as an example. If you go and you have pancreatic cancer, how are you going to evaluate? Well, if you're dead, you're probably going to think that doctor didn't know very much. Well, it turns out that you're probably going to die. You know, and it doesn't necessarily mean that the doctor was a bad doctor. So these things can be very difficult to evaluate. Again, with regard to my own experience, I had a friend of mine ask for a recommendation for a divorce lawyer. And I gave him my recommendation. He said, well, I got on Angie's list, and she doesn't have a very good rating. And I said, well, Paul, most divorce lawyers are probably not going to have, I mean, when 50% of your stuff walks out the door, you're not going to be happy with your lawyer. And that's what's going to happen. 50% of your stuff is going to walk out the door. And so nobody likes their divorce lawyer, because it's a horribly stressful situation. I said, I don't think Angie's List is the best evaluator of legal services. I think you need to ask other lawyers who practice in the field. And she's actually really good. But nobody is terribly happy in a divorce. It doesn't happen in church, right? Nobody's happy in a divorce. And so evaluating these things because of these grievance properties can be very, very difficult. Inconsistency. There's often wide variation or variance in services. Quality will vary with the service providers. Pricing and promotion can be difficult to develop because of the inconsistency. Now, with regard to things like fixing the copier, it's pretty easy to figure out what an hour of service costs. It's, the cost of goods to service it plus the labor. But with regard to other things, it can be difficult to assess. how much it's going to take. In terms, particularly for those knowledge-intensive services like lawyers. I can give you an estimate of what I think it's going to take to evaluate your case and what it will take to take it to trial. But it may, I may have to do a lot more. If you're like my client who says I didn't confess, and then there's a statement that says I did it, I mean, you've now radically changed the parameters in which I'm working. Now I'm going to have to go from there's only circumstantial evidence to we've got a confession, and so now I'm going to have to overcome what? Well, I'm going to have to prove that that confession was somehow coerced, or it wasn't a product of my client's free will. That's going to take a lot more time, and I'm probably going to have to hire experts to testify that he didn't know what he was doing. He's dumb as a Labrador Retriever. When the men with the badge were talking to him, the will was overborne. And that's going to be difficult for me to do, to assess, if we would go from a circumstantial case to you've got a confession and I have to prove that the will is overborne, well, how am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to have to now, my costs are going to go up because now I'm going to have an expert testify that you didn't know what you were doing, probably. So now it's not just the cost of my time, it's now the cost of what? Another service provider that I have to hire to go through that. So it can be difficult to develop pricing strategies on these kinds of things. Most people want to know what the costs are up front, and that can be difficult to do. Organizations, of course, attempt to reduce this inconsistency through standardization and training. So if you think about, for example, something that you all have experienced, a hotel. What do you want in the hotel? Well, you want a clean room that's comfortable. The cleanliness of the room depends on the service of the housekeeping staff. What they're going to try and do at the big hotel chains like Hilton, and Marriott, and the others Sheraton, is ensure that the room is clean, right? They're going to go through a training program. This is the way you have to clean this room. And making sure that it's, the sheets are changed on, this daily basis and things like that. That you pick up the towels, that you vacuum, and that you do it in a time specified. And so they try to do it through standardization, and with regard to things like housekeeping services, that's pretty easy to do. All of the rooms in the Hilton Hotel are pretty much what? I mean, there may be some that are larger suites or something like that require a little bit extra attention, but for the most part, the rooms are what? They're standardized. There's either a king or 2 queen beds in them. They've got a bathroom. They've got a mini bar that's got to be restocked. And so it's easy to standardize those things. It's not easy to standardize a completely complex transaction that involves legal services, for example. My brother's a tax attorney. His clients, to be my brother's client, you have to be worth the poorest person he represents is worth $50 million. That's the floor. And he doesn't have anybody that's at that floor. In order to be handled by his firm, you have to be worth $50 million. He's got 3 clients that are worth over $1 billion. What he does is tax work for them. Now, that's very difficult to standardize, isn't it? Because they've got different kinds of business. Somebody who's worth $1 billion is going to have all kinds of assets that you're going to have to analyze and depreciate, and all different kinds of investments. And so it's not something that can be standardized very easily, and so that can be a problem. Inseparability. And it's related, of course, all of these 4 I's are interrelated. And it's related to mostly to inconsistency. It's hard to separate the provider out from the company itself. And so if you have a bad experience, you're generally going to project that onto the company. If you have a bad experience with American Airlines or Delta, which is why you should fly Southwest, which actually engages in living the brand, you're going to not say, that ticket agent, you're not going to know that ticket agent's name, but you're going to project that bad experience that you had onto the company. So the interaction between the provider and the consumer means that they have to co-create value together. How are you going to co-create value with regards to, for example, something like the airline? Well, one of the things that you have to do is you have to show up on time in order to get your bags checked. And American is very strict about this. If you are not there an hour before, Southwest is great. I'll give you a prime example. American is very strict about baggage. I've had to fly American, much to my chagrin, on several occasions, because UCO goes through this process where we do the lowest and not best bid for our travel arrangements. And so if you are not there, for whatever reason, it does not matter to American why you are not there, and your bags cannot be checked with you, you will not, and you're not there an hour before, they will not let you on the plane, and your bags will not get checked, and they will make you get another flight, and you can either fly standby or you can pay to compensate. You can pay to be assured that you'll get on the next flight.
No, American Airlines is.
They are horrible about this. And so I'm going to the airport to travel with one of my teams one time, and I left him plenty of time to get to my home from Guthrie to the airport, and I was like 5 minutes late because of traffic and an accident on I-35. Not my fault. American didn't care. They're like, your bags are not getting on that flight, and if your bags are not on that flight, you can't get on that flight. You're checking bags. So I have to pay. Southwest, on the other hand, is like, your bags may not make it. If you're not there an hour before, Southwest is very, very easy. They're like, we can't guarantee that your bags will make it onto this flight in time, but we'll get them on the next flight. And so they engage in value co-creation. And so you're going to have these experiences together, and companies that are good at this engage in more value co-creation. Interaction is dependent upon the extent to which the customer must be present. So for example, dry cleaning services are easy to standardize. You want your shirts pressed and starched in light, medium, or heavy starch is something that's, pretty consistent among people, and you can do that. But with regard to legal services, a lot of it's going to depend, for example, going back to the example of my client, the information that you give, if you don't tell your lawyer everything, if you don't tell your doctor everything, they cannot diagnose, if you don't tell them about every ache and pain, they can't really diagnose you properly. And so you're going to have to engage in a lot more value co-creation, a lot more interaction in those instances. Inventory. Inventory for products is dependent upon perishability or the delivery costs. What does that mean? If I have a can of green beans on the shelf and I am a grocer. If I don't sell those green beans today, I can probably sell them tomorrow. What's the perishability? Once something's canned, how long can it sit on the shelf? The answer is years. It can sit there for years and years and years. Look at the expiration date on a can of green beans. It'll shock you. It's like 20 years in the future. Because of preservatives and canning and stuff like that. I can't do that as a lawyer. I am sitting here talking to you today, and I have an opportunity cost. I'm not billing as a result of this time that I'm talking to you. And I will never, unlike the can of green beans, I will never get this time back. I cannot bill for this hour and 15 minutes ever again. I will never get it back. So the inventory cost can be high if you have idle production capacity because of lack of demand. The service continuum, most companies are mixed companies. They're not clearly a service provider or a product provider, but a combination of both. For example, Dell manufactures computers, but they also provide what? Customer support if you have problems with the computer and you call in. And so is it mostly a service or is it mostly a product company? We can classify services in a number of ways. Methods of delivery, are they delivered by people or equipment? For example, like E-Trade is delivered by equipment. Largely it's delivered by your computer over the internet, or is it delivered by people face-to-face, like doctors, lawyers, accountants? We can classify them as for-profit or non-for-profit. Obviously, government-sponsored is another way. That's a non-for-profit. The federal, state, and local governments provide you with services, police, fire protection, water, things like that. So we can classify services in those ways. looking at how consumers purchase services is important. Successful companies understand how purchases are made, how the decision-making process goes. Again, this goes to knowing your industry. How is it that they're going to use these services that you provide them? How do they evaluate them? And determining how to present a competitive advantage for your company is going to be critical in maintaining that customer lifetime value. So how can we do that? What can we do to assess quality of services? Well, we're going to look at the difference between the expectations customers have and the actual experience that they have with our services in the offerings that we provide. We're going to look at things like reliability. If I say I'm going to call you back as a lawyer, do I call you back? If I tell you that I call you back within 24 hours, do I do that? The tangibility, those things that I do provide, are they, the tangible products, are they good products? Does it look like, what a lawyer should provide? The responsiveness, how empathetic is the service provider to you? I will tell you that I was remarkably bad at practicing divorce law. Because I tried it, people would come in and they would start to cry because this is a stressful situation. And I would say things like, because I'm a driver, I just can't help you. If you're a big blubbering mess, you need to come back and talk to me when you're cogent. Just was not good at it. Right? Now, with regard to being a college professor, I think I'm pretty good. I give you my cell phone, and I tell you you can text me. And as long as you're not texting me about blubbering, like you want your grades, I'm pretty responsive. Is that something that I can do? I do have students from time to time, like tell me, about their problems. That's why I try to tell you keep it to 140 characters or less, so that you don't go on and on. I mean, I had one student tell me about his girlfriend and all these problems that she was having. He described them in graphic detail. I don't care. I'm not your strength. Assurance and empathy. Assure them and provide some empathy, some level of compassion. And I am out of time, and we're at the end of the show. So we will start, we have the last exam a week. On Thursday, you have the National Conference on Undergraduate Research going on. And then a week from today, we'll have the third exam. Is that right? Is that what I have in the syllabus, I think? And then we'll start with the presentation.
So we don't have.
We do not have